with him and kind of get over it is probably about the best advice you could give Europe at the moment. But, Jean, the other thing I thought was really interesting about that conversation is how far he is willing to go and how far he is not willing to go in criticizing Donald Trump. And what is the role of somebody in H.R. McMaster's position? And he called on his kind of military background and said, well, it's not the role of a military officer to say who you should vote for. But I thought that he's trying to kind of thread a needle there, I thought.
Yeah, no, I think I'll go a little further. I think there's just a stark contradiction in the position that he's taking. I do understand the reluctance and reticence of retired generals and certainly serving generals to speak out on politics, what he calls partisan politics. The military, you know, serves whichever party is in office, and whichever president is in office, and civilian control is certainly a hallmark of the way this country has always operated and should always operate. But that said, there's a difference between, you know, partisan politics and the future of the nation and national security and things that a retired general, I think, should and does care about. And so on the one hand, he says, get over it. And on the other hand, he details these episodes and incidents that are really frightening and at the very least unsettling, and question the man's fitness to hold any office, much less be commander-in-chief. And so I don't think there's a tightrope there. I think if that's what you're going to tell us, then you should own up to the fact that that's what you're telling us.
Yeah, Mike Barnicle, I know you were listening to that conversation, eager to get your thoughts. And this is someone who obviously decorated military service, and we thank him for that. But should he have gone further and made this book more of a warning about what a second Trump term could be?
Well, Jonathan, first of all, I have not read the book. I have enormous respect for General McMaster. He's a brilliant guy. His book on Vietnam, Dereliction of Duty, is something that every military officer, I think, has read. He's a graduate of West Point. He's got a Ph.D. from North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and I was stunned at one excerpt verbally that he indicated just during the interview with you with regard to Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, where Donald Trump thought he could win his way with Putin, that by offering him a free room at Mar-a-Lago, whatever, that his personality would dominate Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin is one of the most dangerous people in the world. And the President of the United States thinking that he can win him over with a smile and a meal or whatever Donald Trump thought was shocking to me, hearing that from General McMaster. We've had other generals, General Barry McCaffrey, General John Kelly, other generals speak out adamantly about the dangers of a second Trump administration. And I thought General McMaster sort of towed the line on that, and I was surprised by it.
Yeah, we just saw footage there of Helsinki, the most vivid illustration of Trump being subservient to Putin in that moment. And he continues to praise Putin even after the invasion of Ukraine. All right, well, speaking of Trump, the Republican nominee is now raising doubts about whether he will participate in next month's scheduled presidential debate against Kamala Harris as their campaigns fight over the event's ground rules. NBC News senior Capitol Hill correspondent Garrett Haake has the very latest.
The Trump and Harris campaigns dueling over next month's critical presidential debate. Trump casting doubt about attending, and now a new wrinkle.
The deal was we keep the same rules. Now all of a sudden they want to make a change in the rules because she can't answer questions.
In the last face-off at the Biden campaign's request, candidates' microphones were muted while the other candidate was speaking to prevent interruptions. But now the Harris campaign is asking for the mics to be left on at all times. Trump's campaign objecting, but the candidates seeming to acquiesce while taunting the vice president.
It doesn't matter to me. I'd rather have it probably on. The truth is they're trying to get out of it because she doesn't want to debate. She's not a good debater. She's not a smart person.
Vice President Harris has been off the trail since her acceptance speech last Thursday. Sources tell NBC News she's held at least one mock debate.
We've got 75 days to go, so maybe for better and for worse. That's the way I am. Like, that was good, now we gotta move on.
All of it as former President Trump was in battleground Michigan, looking to step on any Harris post-convention bounce. Campaign sources tell NBC News he's planning more aggressive fall travel. And while polls show voters give Harris the advantage on health care and abortion rights, Trump aiming to hammer Harris on two issues where they show she's vulnerable: the economy and the border.
Under Kamala Harris, American veterans are treated worse by far than illegal aliens. Illegal aliens are treated. You ever see them? They stay in hotels. We have veterans sleeping on the street.
Speaking to a National Guard conference, Trump slamming the vice president over the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan, where 13 U.S. service members were killed 3 years ago. Trump laying a wreath at Arlington.
The humiliation in Afghanistan set off the collapse of American credibility and respect all around the world.
Harris writing of the fallen, "My prayers are with their families and loved ones. My heart breaks for their pain and their loss."
Our thanks to Garrett Haake there. We should note Trump refusing to pronounce the vice president's name correctly. Mara, let's talk about the debate. And as we noted earlier, there's now a debate over the debate. And it was, to be fair, it was the Biden team's ground rules. They suggested that they wanted mics to be muted while one candidate was speaking. They didn't want the other to be able to interrupt. The postmortem of that debate was that actually was helpful to Trump because it sort of reined in his impulse to do exactly that. And we know President Biden had a pretty tough night. How do you assess this matchup? It does seem like Trump is looking for ways, if not to get out of the debate, but at least to already start working the refs to offer excuses as to why it may not go well.
Yeah, I think that's right. He's soft-pedaling his, he previously had said anytime, anywhere when it was President Biden. Now that it's someone he views as more formidable, he's kind of trying to walk that back. I actually think that there are some risks here for both of these candidates. I mean, I think it's very important that the American people get to see these two candidates debate. We haven't seen Vice President Harris debate, so there's that. But this carries huge risks for Donald Trump because, like many Republicans, he may be starting to realize, Trumpism may be popular with 45% of the voting population, but every time he opens his mouth and attacks women, attacks minorities, doesn't pronounce the vice president's name properly. He may become aggressive the way he did with Hillary Clinton years ago. That is not going to help him. So the more of Trump voters see, especially extemporaneously, the less there may be to like. There's a lot of risks for him, and I think he knows that Harris is not going to be the same as debating Joe Biden. So
Mike Barnicle, it does seem like the Harris team wants Trump to talk as much as possible. As we noted earlier, when he gave his news conference at Bedminster last week, the Harris campaign promoted it, saying, hey, be sure to tune in, because they thought he would say something that would be politically damaging. And that's their thought about this debate next month as well, where they're also, Donald Trump will have to square off with a prosecutor. Trump, maybe setting up excuses, but I just find it hard to believe that he eventually would back out of the debate and risk being called a coward.
Well, I don't disagree with you, Jonathan, but what would he fear most, being called a coward for backing out of a debate, or the reality within him who knows how he might react in the ring with a black woman who is criticizing him? He could go absolutely haywire like that, just snap and destroy his candidacy in a single second on national TV.
Joining us now, Democratic Senator Chris Coons of Delaware. He is on both the Foreign Relations and the Judiciary Committees. Senator Coons, thank you very much for joining us this morning. A whole load of things that we want to talk to you about this morning, including, of course, the debate about the debates. But I want to start with yesterday, which was the third anniversary of the withdrawal of American forces from Afghanistan. You've heard the criticism from Donald Trump. It was there in our package earlier. Do you feel that there is any better response that Vice President Harris and Joe Biden, indeed, could be giving on this anniversary to the criticism that this was mishandled by the Biden-Harris administration and that there has not been, on this anniversary, more of an overt expression of remorse from the White House?
Look, Katty, I was at Dover Air Force Base with President Biden when the families of the 13 Americans fallen in that tragic incident were there to greet and welcome home their loved ones, their remains. And no one is as committed to comforting and supporting and sustaining veteran families in moments of grief and day in and day out than President Biden. The PACT Act is the most significant investment in veteran health care in American history, something that the Biden-Harris administration shepherded through Congress and then he signed into law. And as General H.R. McMaster himself has said, former President Trump bears a fair amount of responsibility for the timing and the type of withdrawal that we ultimately went through to get out of Afghanistan, a 20-year conflict. I think there's plenty of responsibility to go. I'm sorry, I'm hearing feedback. Forgive me. I do think there's plenty of responsibility for what was a tragic incident. What matters to me is who better respects America's veterans than those who've served. And as you know, former President Trump recently shockingly said that he thought the Congressional Medal of Honor was not that significant because the folks who earned it had died in action or were all shot up, when comparing a medal that he gave to a donor to a medal that is earned by America's service members for valor and sacrifice.
Okay, handle like a pro, by the way, on the feedback. Thank you for doing that. Tell us if you can. Tell us if you have problems carrying on. But since we're on H.R. McMaster and something he had, we just had a discussion. I'm sure you heard at the beginning of this program just now about something he said to America's European allies about how basically they should get over it about their fears of Donald Trump being re-elected to a second term. Would that be your advice to America's allies were Donald Trump to win in November?
My advice to the American people is take seriously the fact that Donald Trump's former Secretary of Defense, National Security Advisor, Chief of Staff, and Vice President have all in different settings said that he belongs nowhere near the White House again. And I understand and respect why our allies around the world are gravely concerned about what a return of Donald Trump to the White House would mean. If nothing else, it would certainly mean chaos and unpredictability. He continues to undermine our alliances and our partnerships. His principal focus in talking about NATO, which is a vital and important alliance that contributes to American security and prosperity, is to criticize the contributions of our NATO allies as if somehow NATO is a protection racket rather than a security alliance. And to give really no respect for the enormous progress that's been made in increasing the partnership and the contributions of NATO allies under the Biden-Harris administration's leadership.
Senator Coons, let's turn to the Middle East. Talks still ongoing in Cairo, but no deal yet for a ceasefire and hostages release. There seems to be both sides dug in. And your assessment here, what more needs to be done? And do you feel like that both Hamas, but also Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu are putting a deal at the forefront of their agenda? Do they want to make this happen?
Well, they need to make this happen. It's been 325 tragic days that families, including American families, have been waiting and praying and working for the release of their loved ones. One of the most compelling moments of the Democratic Convention in Chicago last week was when John and Rachel, the parents of Hirsch Goldberg Poland, came out to the stage, shared as parents their suffering and pain about how long their son has been held captive by Hamas. And they conveyed this is not a political point, but a humanitarian one. I was encouraged that there was a somber and reflective and emotionally supportive audience given to them by the tens of thousands of folks in